Hey everybody, this is Kevin with GrayLine Overland, and I'm here with Mike, and we're fixing to talk about the Mojave Road. But before we do that, I'd like to ask you to do me a favor and just reach down there and hit the subscribe button, because it really helps us out with the YouTube metrics and stuff like that. So help us out like that, and just hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up if you like our content. We would really appreciate it. So let's dive right in. All right, first thing I'd like to talk about is our planning phase. All right, so some things that you need to do before you head out there is proper planning, of course. And whenever we're setting up for something like this, and we had plenty of time to set up for this, we actually wanted to kind of lay out whose responsibility was what. We had a set group. We wanted to make sure that everybody knew what they were supposed to do. So in order to do that, what we did was me and Mike. It was supposed to be it was supposed to be 3, possibly 4 people, but it ended up just being me and Mike when it all came down to it. Some mechanical failures, things like that, prevented Mongo from coming, and one of the other guys, he just couldn't make it. So it ended up just being me and him, and that's fairly easy because we ride together a lot, and we kind of know what to expect out of each other, and know how to deal with each other. So first thing that we did was we laid out who was going to be there, and then we kind of laid out our meals. And we'll talk a little bit about that. We split up the grocery list, and both of us failed on that.
Yeah.
And I forgot the pickles.
Yeah, I didn't bring enough cheese apparently. So. And you forgot your own mayo.
I forgot my own mayo. Yeah. So we, but what we did was I cooked was it steaks one night?
Yeah. We had steaks the first night?
No, hamburgers the first night.
Hamburgers first night.
Steaks the second night, and
which was our last night.
Which was our last night. We ended up only doing it in 2 days. We'd actually planned on doing it in 3 days.
3 days.
But we'll get into that and why we made that decision here in a little bit. But we did the trail in 2 days. All we had was to drive out on the last day.
I've got the list here because I was using it for this upcoming trip I got.
Right.
But we planned out who was bringing breakfast items.
Yeah.
Right. So we planned out the breakfast, bacon, eggs, that sort of stuff. Fairly easy things to cook on the trail. But you did have your beans, so we had a larger kitchen than what some other people might have if they're just using their Jeep or whatever they might be using. But coffee. I drink Monster, so I gotta have a refrigerator full of Monster.
Oh yeah.
You had your Ruby Red grapefruit juice.
No, I actually forgot that.
Oh, you forgot that too?
I did forget my Ruby Red grapefruit juice, because that is something that I normally drink every morning before I drink my coffee.
Water is important, right?
Absolutely.
And I think we had enough out there. We each brought about 2 gallons.
I brought 4.
Okay. So you just want to plan ahead for that, right? Knowing how much you drink. I try not to just completely hydrate only with caffeine.
Right.
And then, so having a couple gallons of water and knowing how long you're going to be there, 1 gallon a day or 2 gallons a day, whatever suits your own needs.
Yeah.
Plus the temperatures weren't very hot.
No, they weren't. And actually, I feel like our trail conditions and our weather conditions were absolutely perfect. You couldn't ask for any better.
Right. And so that helped with the water consumption. You don't necessarily need quite as much as if you're sweating the whole time. Lunch, we just did sandwiches, right? And then dinners when we sat down and cooked, and that was good. I thought the meals went fairly well and easy. There wasn't a lot of waste or trash.
Right.
We just kind of cooked and ate what we needed, and then there was plenty for the whole thing.
I
think we had a little bit of leftovers.
Yeah, we did. But wasn't excessive or anything like that. The hamburgers are something that's real quick and easy. It's fairly simple to just, and that's why I did it the first night, because I knew that we were probably going to run later on the first night because the amount of miles that we were trying to cover on night 1 and driving out to the trail, which I would probably say, if you're a decent distance away, I would probably say drive out and then camp and then start your trail the next day if you're not pressed for time.
Right, yeah, it's a time issue.
And if it's a time issue, and the thing about it is we actually had enough time to have done that because we ended up doing the trail in 2 days.
But we didn't know.
But we did not know.
Yeah.
But actually driving there and camping, I think, would be a good choice for somebody, because there is a campsite right at the beginning of the trail.
Right.
And that is a good...
The other thing I want to mention about food is you have a habit of breaking eggs inside of your trailer.
Absolutely.
And so we went with the pre-scrambled carton of eggs, and I think
that's a better idea. It's just
works,
a better idea.
Right?
I mean, I love to have the whole egg and scramble it up, or cook it over easy or whatever. You know, I'm eating over easy and over medium. You know, most of the time now. But when I'm on the trail, scrambled is just easier. And if you're going to do scrambled, you might as well get them pre-scrambled and do the egg beater thing. But do it with real eggs, because the fake eggs. We had real eggs.
You know, the other thing you could do, right, is just get a container, scramble your eggs beforehand, and put them, since we have fridges in my Jeep and in your trailer. Yeah. So I think there's options there for people to try out.
Absolutely. And what I would say is, even though we had the bean and we had the full kitchen, if you've got a cooktop, you will have no problem cooking most things out on the grill. Out on the trail.
Yeah.
And you know, a scottle's nice and everything. It is a very big item, and neither one of us have a scottle, but they do have some benefits. But it's with the kitchen that we have, everything's there, and we can kind of lay everything out. It's a lot of convenience, but not necessarily a necessity.
No, I think we would have been fine with my 2-burner Coleman.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, those things are like the tried and true kind of stove that everyone has. You know, you can go with Mountain House prepackaged, freeze-dried kind of meals and just boil some water in a jet boil, and those aren't bad either, especially if you're only on the road for 2 days or 3 days. Eating those repeatedly over and over again might get a little bit old for people, but if you did something with a jet boil, you know, you could really lighten the load.
Absolutely.
If you're doing just vehicle travel.
Absolutely. And so that's what we're going to be doing in our upcoming trip, is just vehicle travel. I won't have the bean or anything like that, so no extra creature comforts. And we're probably set up pretty good for that, though. We're going to do sandwiches for lunch, and we'll be at points where we can stop and get food.
And I'm debating on bringing the Coleman.
Yeah, and I think it would be a good idea. It'd be a good idea to at least have it.
Right, so I've got 3 stove options. So I got the jet boil, I've got a 2-burner Coleman, and then I have a smaller mountaineering stove that basically just uses the can as the base. And so you can, as long as you hold on to the pot, you can cook whatever you want in it. It's got an adjustable flame. Yeah. So I'll probably bring that.
That's a good idea, and maybe bring some Mountain House meals just in case.
Yeah.
And that way we know we've got food just in case.
Right.
And that's something that you want to do. You always want to have a little bit extra, because you never know when you're going to need it or something's going to happen and you have to be out there longer. So what we did was, I'm really big on bringing extra food because I don't like to be hungry. I actually did set up to have 1 extra meal at least, or 1 extra day of meals at least in the bean. So we did plan for extra. Just in case, and that's something I would say is very important.
At least a full pack of hot dogs left.
Oh,
that were untouched.
Yeah, hot dogs definitely. I think we had beans and stuff like that. Or did we eat all the beans?
No, I still. I can't remember if I brought 2 or 1 can.
Yeah.
I know I have more inside.
Yeah.
But I bought extra because they're good anyways.
Yeah. But beans are awesome on the trail. They're always good. They warm you up. I mean.
So obviously food prep. Planning and prepping and water is important.
And the camp spot. So we had planned on covering a certain amount of mileage, and that's something that we did. We actually planned for mileage.
Might want to start. So we used
the Fun
Treks book as a guide for breaking up our days. Right.
Right.
We used the book and the online GPS files.
Right.
In Gaia to allow us to plan the trip.
Yes.
Out.
So we used Gaia. As the on-trail mapping system, and then the book kind of gives you the layout, tells you all the waypoints and things like that, places that you can go, so and see all the attractions you can see and stuff like that. So it's a great companion to Gaia because it has all of that stuff, and it's got everything kind of built in to the book, and then you can use the actual map on Gaia.
And so we plan to do essentially east, central, west. Break it up into thirds.
Right. And we knew that we weren't going to finish east the first day because
I had hoped. I had hoped.
But I actually had a place that I wanted to camp, which was where we camped. It was at the top of the ridge, and it was close. it was close to the end, but not at the end.
We had
it was
about
like
10 miles.
10 miles, something like that. And it was about 2/3 of the way, I do believe. Let's see here. Yeah. Oh, actually, it was more than 2/3 of the way. It's 38.7 miles is west, and we were about 10 miles from the end. So we were almost 3/4 of the way.
Yeah.
And so we really did make a lot of ground, considering the drive out there was like, what, 6-7 hours, something like that, wasn't it?
No, I thought it was 5.
Was it 5? Okay.
And we may have made it 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah, because
I think 5 is what you could do it.
It's usually a little longer, especially when you're
towing a trailer
and stuff
driving
like
in
that.
my Jeep.
Yeah. So and I think it ended up being like, we got there at like 3 o'clock or something like that. I think that's what it was.
But you know, the ridge, right? Like it's nice.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And you get good views, but you got to put up with the wind.
You do have to put up with the wind, and for me, that's not a big deal. But for Mike over here in the
it wasn't too bad because I have a mountaineering tent. It's designed for 4 seasons. It's designed to handle snow loads and winds, and so once you get used to a little bit of the shaking and the noise, you're not going to blow away. I'm not going to go falling down the ridge, tumbling in my tent. Though I did have that dream that night. Oh man, I thought I was rolling.
But I'll tell you, for me, the pictures and the beautiful sunrise that I got up on that ridge was worth every bit of it. And yes, he did. He slept right through it. I tend to get up pretty early so I can get some nice shots of the sunrise and just kind of sit around and drink my coffee and stuff.
Yeah.
But I felt like the ridge was a good camping spot. But like you said, you do have to deal with a little bit of wind. But it's definitely not as bad as the wind that we were experiencing when we were thinking about our second camp night and going through Central. Going all the way through Central. If you'll remember, we were in that open area where the wind was just kicking like crazy on that second.
I don't remember.
So we ended up, whenever we were out there, we had a set amount of miles that we said we wanted to do, and we wanted to at least finish Central and then get to the west. And when we got there, we were going to start looking for good campsites, and there were just not any really good ones at the end of and I think that's what we were talking about a while ago.
Oh yeah.
There was not any really good ones that were shielding us from the wind on west, and so it wasn't going to be a pretty campsite or anything like that. It was just going to kind of be out in the middle of nothing. And after, I believe it was the whoops and stuff
in Central,
we decided, let's just try to cover some ground. And not to mention what day it was. We also had a trail mishap that you'll see in the video that actually pushed us a little different too, because we were kind of worried about the beam and what happened with the beam.
So we were able to repair it.
We did. I mean, an hour on the trail with a dead blowing stuff.
But I mean, and then after obviously we planned out the route. We planned to follow the book with the east, the central, the west, one day in each section, and we kind of picked out the spots. And if you have the book, or if you do research, you can get a book just on the Mojave Desert and the Mojave Road itself. But we didn't get that. We just went off of this. We missed a lot.
We missed a lot of information because of that. There was a couple out there that they were traveling with a trailer. They were in an Opus. And those Opuses are pretty awesome, by the way. If you're thinking about an overlanding trailer, you might want to check it out just to kind of give you another option outside of what I deal with. But the Opus was a pretty nice little setup. But he actually had a Mojave Road only guidebook, and he had so much more detail in his book.
And I think that's a great way to go, right? We should have had a book that's dedicated to it. This book is not dedicated to one specific trail, but it's a good start.
It's a great start.
It gave us the GPS files. We can compare what we see on the map on Gaia to the waypoints that are here, so we know what our progress is. But if you have the other book, then we can look at the other details in the spot. So, for example, spoiler alert, the bus is no longer there.
Yes, the bus is gone. It has been removed.
And so while we're looking for that, we could have known that or something like that.
Right. And we were looking everywhere to try to find this bus. And then when we came across the Opus, we talked to them, I talked to them, and I was asking them about the bus, and they said, no, the bus has already been removed. And it was in their guidebook that it had been removed. So that would have been helpful.
So I think that's important, right? In your prep, you need to really do more research. Like we knew we could get through the trail by following the GPS.
Yeah.
But we probably could have had a little bit more, a little better experience on the sightseeing side of it. We hit a lot of the sites throughout the whole thing, but we probably could have just done a little bit more detail, which would have slowed us down.
Yeah.
And that would have been fine.
Yeah. But there's a lot of stuff to see out there that we actually did not see, as far as on the, especially on the west side, because at that point we were kind of just.
Yeah, we're not fans of the West.
We're not real fans of the West, but like you said, we'll talk about that in a moment. So let's start off with.
So the other thing I wanted to mention was some vehicle prep itself, right? And so, anything can get through this trail realistically, right? There was one hard, and it's not even a hard spot. There was the one downhill, and it had alternating divots in it that were kind of large, but you're able to drag your trailer down it. And I don't mean drag in a bad way. But there's also a bypass. There's a road that just goes right around it. And so you could do this in
a stock vehicle.
You could, well, not just a stock vehicle. I would argue you could do this in like my Volkswagen Atlas.
Yeah,
right? It's got all-wheel drive. It's got selectable.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have a transfer case like a normal, like a real four-wheel drive.
Right.
But a full-size truck could probably do the whole thing. We saw some full-size trucks.
Oh yeah, we saw a bunch of those. Yeah.
Subaru Outback, Forester, Crosstrek, any of those cars can absolutely do this trail.
Absolutely.
It's not stuck to, being in a Jeep or a Tacoma or something like that.
Right.
I would say those new Ford Broncos could make it.
I would say the only spot that I would say that the Atlas would have trouble was going out to Fort Paiute. Do you think that the Atlas could make it out to Fort Paiute using the bypasses?
Well, but Fort Paiute. So the issue with Fort Paiute is just that it's a little bit rocky.
Yeah,
and so I wouldn't drive it like a trophy truck.
Right.
If that was my vehicle of choice, which clearly it's not, I would absolutely be able to make it in that.
Yeah, just picking the right lines.
Right. The problem with a vehicle like that doesn't have, and I think some Subarus could run into some problems too in different places, is if you get a wheel in the air for any reason, you're kind of stuck.
Yeah.
Right? Because it doesn't have lockers, doesn't have a real transfer case, and so all it just ends up spinning.
Yeah.
Now there's certainly ways to get around that kind of thing. The point is that you need to know your vehicle's capabilities and then not exceed those capabilities.
Yeah.
Because that's when things break, that's when people get hurt, those sorts of things. Unless you're out there to try and test something.
Right.
Right. And that's not the Mojave Road, I don't think.
Right. And now for some people it is, but because there is stuff out there that you could.
Right. But what I'm saying is that it wouldn't be smart to go out there in a Honda Accord.
No.
But an all-wheel drive vehicle, I think, would satisfy maybe all the way through east and central. West might have a little bit of trouble because you go through a bunch of loose sand.
So did you keep yours in two-wheel drive going up the hill to the ridge on the first night?
I was in two-wheel drive the entire trip, except for the descent on that one section.
Right.
Where it had the alternating.
Which had a bypass.
Absolutely.
So I had to put in four-wheel drive going up the hill, but I did that more as a precautionary thing, and because I'm towing a trailer, so you've got more traction requirements.
I did use my rear locker just in case.
Yeah.
So I used the rear locker on the ridge, the lower from where we camped, but I was two-wheel drive the whole time.
Right.
Through the sand, through everything, I was in two-wheel drive.
Yeah, and that's that goes to show you that. As long, like you said, as long as you have an all-wheel drive, preferably, you're really going to have no issues because all of the rough stuff, for the most part, has bypasses, or you can get around some of the rough stuff. And like I said, Fort Paiute it's kind of a rocky trail through there. It's not so much that it's hard; it's just a lot of rocky stuff, a lot of rocks. And
to me, I call it like cobbles.
Yeah,
right. And it's like little rocks, not little rocks,
and
but
you could get hung up a little
rocks that are like spread throughout.
Yeah,
you can't really avoid them, but you just have to pick the right sort of line. There's nothing you need to get out and spot people for and have them come like that kind of thing.
Right. It's so. That's the only thing that I would be concerned with is that little section right there, and then going up the little hill. You might have a little bit of trouble with.
Definitely the hill, that ridge. Going up the ridge is the only
you
spot
might lift
that
a wheel
I would be concerned with a vehicle that isn't necessarily off-road specific.
Right, and that me too, because there are some areas right through there that you might lift a wheel and stuff like that. But let me just tell you, momentum will carry you over all of it.
And it's probably different during the day.
Yeah.
We went through it at night with our lights. So, but back to vehicle prep, making sure your vehicle's ready to go for these things. I smartly, not smartly, changed out my gas tank.
Yeah.
Right before, and didn't really have any test rides on it.
Right.
I drove it around town for a couple of days to make sure that gas was flowing. But I didn't have like a shakedown run in a local area.
Right.
But I was really tired of the problems I was having with the old gas tank.
Right.
So I saw it more of an advantage than a disadvantage to changing it out.
And that was against my better judgment because I thought that we were going to end up being crippled and not be able to go because of that choice. But in the end, it ended up working out, and that fixed the problem that you've been having with because you've had
I put holes in the gas tank. On two different occasions, one on the Rubicon, and then I don't know where the other one happened. But then the overpressurization of it,
that's the big thing.
The relief valve, not the relief valve, but the
overflow.
Yeah, the rollover valve doesn't, for some reason, doesn't let the gases escape into the evap canister.
Right.
And so the system isn't operating as it should.
Right.
And so I'd have to go in and release that gas cap fairly regularly, and then I'm just venting it, which defeats the emissions.
Right.
Pick or choose your evil here and what you want.
Right.
And so now my Jeep has a stock plastic gas tank, stock fittings, with an aftermarket Genrite skid plate. And I love it. And over my old gas tank was more of an Overland gas tank, right? It was a 28-gallon gas tank. But now I'm down to 20 gallons. And so with the 7 on the back, the old 28, I was at 35 gallons of gas on a trip. And that's a lot.
That is a lot. And
now I'm down by 8, so I've got 27 gallons total,
which is still a fairly decent amount.
It's still good. It's 20-gallon gas tank underneath, and then 7 gallons on the back.
That's something I'd like to talk about as well here in just a moment. But also, I actually went through. You were over there the day before, and I actually went through, and what I tend to want to do just about every time I go out is I want to make sure everything's greased and put my hands on everything, make sure it's all good. And I did that like a couple of days beforehand, and just kind of going through. He saw me. I get under there, and I really do a pretty extensive run through on everything and make sure nothing's broke, no bolts are loose, and grease everything, because maintenance, especially with your control arms, you want to make sure that those things are greased, because that's the way you wear those bushings out and those joints and everything, and that's not cheap to replace, number one, and not to mention you don't want to have failures on the trail. So I get under there and make sure to minimize the amount the things that could go wrong on the trail by looking over everything and kind of going through that. But I'm
gas.
The amount of gas that you need.
So I was a bit nervous because after the first night I had, or in that morning, so the second morning, whatever, I had put 3.5 gallons into the tank. Because I felt like I was a little low on gas.
You were a little lower than I was, but not by much.
No, and then, but we made it all the way through, and I think I put I don't remember when I put the last 3.5 in. I don't think it was at our camp the second night, but we were done the second night.
So if I hadn't had gas, I wouldn't have made it out.
Right, so gas is important, and I don't think you can bring too much. I mean, you could bring too much.
Right.
However, you had 5 gallons of gas.
Right.
I had 7 gallons of gas. Our gas tanks are similar in size. You're pulling a camper. Right. And so if you're overlanding, you really need to know what your miles are going to be, or what your mileage on your vehicle is for longer trips like this, because there's no gas. Now, the good thing is, looking at these maps, there are roads that you could exit. So if you're, let's say you get to a quarter of a tank and you haven't finished the whole thing, you could simply drive to a gas station up in like Baker, I think, and then come back.
Right, but
there's options.
Yeah, there is options, but it would be better to be able to have the gas on hand so that you don't have to take that time. So we ended up kind of finishing east, looking for a campsite, and then we got to west. And what did we do at west?
We just drove straight through west as fast as we could,
and
it was miserable.
It was miserable.
I do not.
So,
if I had my choice, I wouldn't do the west section at all.
Yeah.
I'd drive around, come in the opposite way, just so we can do the water obstacles, which people will tell you have been filled in, but that's not completely true.
Right.
It's definitely reduced by at least half.
Yeah.
But you still get to go through the water.
Well, and there's that one that hasn't been filled in that was actually deeper than the main water crossing. Remember that first one we went through?
One,
yeah. We were thinking, because we were coming in from that side, and we were like, "Is this the water obstacle?"
Right,
because it was actually fairly deep, and it was deeper than the main obstacle.
I think on my Jeep it probably came up, and I'm on 35-inch tires. With 5 inches of lift, and I think it came up at least to the top of the wheel.
Yeah.
Not the tire, but at least to the top of the wheel. So which would be the bottom of the frame, roughly. Mm-hmm.
So
on my Jeep.
It actually came over the door on the beam, but thankfully it's watertight. So
that part worked on the beam at least.
Yes, that did. And we're going to talk about the beam and what happened with the beam while we were out there. But yeah, it actually did come over the tire. Over the door, and it did keep the water out, which I'm very happy with the fact that it did that, because I definitely didn't want to have to sleep in the wet with a wet mattress.
Right.
But the things that we did experience was after the whoops, and toward the end of east, we noticed we were going up to a mine.
We were going to the mine.
Yeah.
And it's west. You keep getting...
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But
it was central. It was central coming up to east.
No, you're still wrong.
I'm still wrong?
Yeah.
Was it at the end of west?
When we broke the beam?
Yeah.
It was in the start of west. Yeah, we had gone into west, and we were going to the mine.
Sorry. I'm still east coasting it. Excuse me.
So we had... So there is...
I see what you're saying now.
On the map, there is a mine that is shown in the Fun Treks book here, and we decided we were going to go look at it.
Right, we wanted to go look at it. So we start heading out there, and I get up there, and we're going out to look, and I'm like, well, they told me we'll probably have to hike up to it. So I get out of the Jeep, and I walk back there, and I look at the beam,
and the rim has started to talk.
The rim has pretty much folded in, like I'm trying to fold a taco or something.
And we don't know where it happened. I will say a lot of west has a lot of washboard.
Right.
You know, central has the whoops, which you just deal with, but they're not rough.
Yeah.
Right? You just have to... Yeah. We're not trophy trucks, so we're not going fast there.
Right,
we just keep it under control. But there's a lot of washboard. And the problem with washboard is all the bumps, and they can do damage.
Yeah.
And so, do we go faster to ride on top of them, or do we slow down not to damage something? And who knows where the beam got damaged?
So we had picked up the pace a good bit towards the end of east.
Towards the end of
Central. Towards the end of Central. Towards the end of Central.
We'll lay it out for you.
Yeah. Towards the end of Central, we had picked it up a little bit, and I feel like I may have possibly done it there, but we can't pinpoint it for certain. And then when we went to the mine, I noticed it, and the wheels were actually bent to the point that you could see the bead completely exposed.
Right, but the bead stays seated.
But the bead stayed seated, and I did not lose my air pressure. So I immediately saw it, and I went to work. I grabbed my very small dead blow.
Yeah.
No bounce.
There was no bounce. No real ass behind it.
Yeah, there was no ass there. And I was the ass that was there was the ass that I brought. And and I started beating that wheel out, and I got it pretty close to where I wanted it. And then I went to the other side, and my arm just completely gave out because swinging hammers and being a mechanic all my life, my arms they give out.
Right, but it goes to the point that you really have to be prepared for these things. And so we could have switched out the wheel, right?
But both of them did it.
But you had two.
Yeah.
So an issue.
That's the thing, is we could have, if it would just been one wheel, we could have just swapped it out and kept moving and not had an issue. But it was two.
And to me, it speaks to a larger point, though, in your whole trail prep, right? We're talking about how we're sharing on food and things like that, and we've talked about it before, but what U joints are you running in your vehicle?
1310 and 1350.
Right, and so I've got some of those also.
Yeah.
Right, and so do you have enough spare parts to ensure that you can get off the trail? But what about your buddy who may not have either the time or the money, or has forgotten the part, or something like that? What about spare tires? Some people carry them, some people don't. Mm-hmm. I have a spare tire. You have a spare tire.
A lot of people roll without
Both of ours are 35-inch tires.
Yep.
However, what's your bolt pattern?
Different from yours.
Right? Yours is 5-on-5?
5-on-5. 5-on.
I'm on 5-on-5.5.
Yeah.
And so our wheels aren't interchangeable.
I think they are 5-on-5.5.
All right.
I'll get y'all that spec. I'm not 100% sure on that.
And so there's a possibility our wheels aren't interchangeable.
Yeah.
So we can't help each other out. Right? Because what happens when you get 2 flat tires? Right? We got plug kits, valve stems. I bought those emergency valve stems that I've had in my kit for a while now. So there's lots of different things you kind of have to think about.
And the beam has a different lug pattern altogether. Yeah, it's 6-on-5 or something like that.
Yeah.
6-on-6.
And you only have one spare tire.
I only have one spare. And so luckily he had a bigger hammer. I was trying to avoid using because I didn't want to damage the wheel, because it was a metal hammer instead of a rubber hammer. But my little rubber hammer.
Metal dead blow.
Yeah, metal dead blow versus a no bounce dead blow that I had. So I did everything I could with the small hammer that I had, which is definitely not enough to bend a wheel in the way that I used it. And then I took his, and we actually got that wheel bent back straight. I took it to a shop, and they said that the lip was a little mangled, just a little bit, but the wheel was straight. We actually beat it back straight.
Yeah, well, and that was the good thing too about that hammer that I have, is it has 2 different ends, right? It has the flat end and then it has the cone kind of shape end.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of use it to help shape a little bit.
Right.
And we did, right? We needed that point.
But I tell you what we really needed more than anything was Mongo. Mongo, you just keep that in mind. We needed you out there. We needed a fair out there.
Yeah.
But we did pretty good. It took us about an hour of swinging a hammer, taking turns so that we could get feeling back in our arms and stuff, but we overcame it. Yeah. And but that also pushed us to kind of move a little faster. Well, between that and the crappy terrain that we experienced on West.
We didn't. So there's a lot of like side-by-sides and other things that come in on the West section because it's close.
Motorcycles
to the 15.
Right.
To I-15 there.
Yeah, it's 15.
Yeah, and Barstow's not that far from it. So lots of people come in from different areas, and they bring out all kinds of trucks, high-speed desert trucks, side-by-sides, dirt bikes. I would say dirt bikes probably less affect the road less than these other heavier vehicles.
Right, dirt bikes are actually very minimal effect.
And so there's also lots of trails that have been made that kind of lead you astray from the end of the Mojave Road until you get past that section. And so the dry lake bed, that was cool.
Oh yeah.
That was fun to go through.
It was fun. It was very dead looking, as a matter of fact. But it was fun because we actually got out of all the washboard and the whoops and everything like that and got onto a nice flat place that we could actually make up some time.
And then they had the rock pile. Don't spoil the rock pile.
I'm not going to tell you what it said, but
there's the rock pile in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
For no real reason.
I know, no real reason whatsoever. But it's there.
You do. If the winds have picked up, you have to be careful because the last part of the west section has sand.
Oh yeah.
Right, and you could get very lost.
Oh yeah.
In that area if you
so having the trail map is important.
Having the trail map, having GPS, because GPS is going to show you where you are.
Yeah.
And if you zoom in enough, you'll see whether you're right or left or whatever of trail.
And so that brings us to our last day, and we missed a good bit on West. There was things that I would have liked to have seen, but to tell you the truth, I was done. I was done.
And by last day, you mean the end of our
second day. Yeah. So we decided that we were going to make it to the camp, and there's a great camp, by the way, at the so about 10. What is it?
5 miles. 5 miles from the highway.
Yeah, there's a great place to camp.
There's a little state campground.
Yeah, and also at the end of let me get this right. At the end of West, East. At the end of East, there's a great campsite just off the trail. Always, it's a private campground. Has running showers and everything. Running water showers, all that stuff. So there's a camp spot there, just so y'all know. And then this one was another one, and it was only $6 for a campsite, and you could,
I think so. Yeah,
you could pile in as many people as you want. So that was and it had a, like, not a running water or anything, but it had the outdoor toilet, composting toilet.
It had the pit toilet.
Yeah, the pit
which
toilet.
you find anywhere.
Yeah, and those, but really nice facility. Just bare bones, but it was really nice place.
It does allow RVs.
Yes.
So you do get some generators and that sort of thing there.
And there are no real rules to doing generators,
there's
except for
no issues with it there. But it was good. I really enjoyed that campground.
Yeah.
I think planning it out, like I said, what I would do is I would drive east and central. I would get on the road towards Barstow, go to the end of the trail,
and then come in and do all the mines.
I would set up camp at the campground.
Exactly.
And then I would go explore, because we didn't do the Spooky Canyon.
Yeah, and we didn't do the mines over there. There was a lot of good stuff over there, but to be honest, the beating that I took with the trailer and everything, I was just ready to leave on Sunday morning and call it.
And I think the real point comes down to it is there's so many options on this trail.
Yeah, there is. And it's, by the way, just so y'all know, this was probably my favorite overland route of all time. Actually, it is my favorite overland route of all time so far. It was very fun. Like I said, like we both said over and over again, the west section sucks. But the end of the west section has a lot of cool stuff to see. So don't just skip it, go around it, and then come back in and see all the cool stuff. Because I would still like to see all that stuff. But it didn't happen, so we're good. But at the same time, there's a lot of cool stuff to see on that end. Only thing that you're really missing on the other part is Traveler's Monument, and that's the only thing that you'd be missing.
That's the rock pile?
Yeah.
Okay.
Traveler's Monument. Yeah. And everything else is, I mean, if you don't care about Traveler's Monument, it's not a big deal to you, then just go around and be done with it. Because west is really not a great section. But, like I said, you can come in, you can do the mine, stuff like that, go through the water crossings if you want, things like that. Those things are fun, and you could definitely do that. But as far as what were your takeaways? As far
I really enjoyed it. I had a blast. Had my daughter with us.
Yeah.
And she had fun. Surprisingly, cell phone connectivity was
very
pretty good.
Yeah.
It was, there were certainly spots. Not that I'm looking to watch movies and download whatever, but you could have communication if you had a problem.
And I actually had cell service to watch videos on the ridge. That ridge that night. I had enough to watch on my tablet.
And so that's good to know that you do have some good cell phone service throughout. Bring plenty of water. Bring plenty of gas.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I'm ready to go back and go with some other people.
You don't want to take me out there?
No. You're moving back to Alabama. So, there's that. But no, I would go with anybody on this again.
Yeah.
It really is a lot of fun. I think it's a good family kind of trip. You could make it your first one. You could make it when you're more experienced. It doesn't really matter. You do the research. You get the book. Get the book specifically for it. Get a GPS. And you don't have to go. I use my phone for guidance.
Yeah,
right, and so you don't have to go expensive GPS.
Right. You can the Gaia app is.
This is an expensive GPS.
Yeah, it is, but it's something that we all carry around.
Yeah,
and the Gaia app is free unless you want the subscription, which I highly recommend.
I do have a subscription,
but you can get everything that you need without it. You can do everything you need without it, but it's definitely beneficial.
I think it's a great trip just to get out away from pretty much everything. It's not one of those where you go and you just run something like a single trail in a day and then you go back to your house or whatever. Yeah. Like, this is a good weekend trip. And it's a good long weekend trip.
It is. And you can rush through it like we did. Get it done in 2 days, or you can actually spend a solid 3 and maybe even a 4th day if you want to do a lot of exploring.
I think for sure you could spend a day on each section and do a bunch of because there's other roads, right, that lead to different things to go look at. And if we had the other book or a book that was more detailed, you could look at some of those things. But
and don't miss out on Fort Paiute. I really liked Fort Paiute.
I thought Fort Paiute was nice.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool to see that kind of Wild West stuff.
Yeah.
The fact that it was only used for a couple of years or a couple of months was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was a couple of years, I think.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
But the whole thing is great. I mean, it's a good way to see the desert. Now, we didn't see much wildlife out there while we were there.
No, we didn't. But now the vegetation was awesome.
Yeah, because you really go through a bunch of different elevations.
Yeah.
And so you'll start there near Havasu in Bullhead City, right? And at a lower elevation. And then you'll start to climb. And once you get up to that 4,000 foot elevation, you really start to see those Joshua trees come out. And it was awesome because the trail is so kind of narrow in points that the vehicle just barely fits through the Joshua trees. And they're all protected, so we want to make sure that they're there for a long time. But
I'll say this.
It's a great, the scenery's great. The lava tubes were really cool.
Oh, the lava tubes were awesome. So the scenery in the Mojave. So if you go to Anza-Borrega, you have a certain idea of what you think the desert's going to look like. That's not the Mojave. The Mojave has some of that, but the Mojave has lots of vegetation, lots of beauty. To me, the Mojave Desert is the most beautiful desert I've ever seen. It's just amazing the things that you see out there as far as vegetation goes. I can't explain it. It's just something that you have to see for yourself.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I think that's a wrap right there. We're going to close it here. I do appreciate everyone. If you haven't yet, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Really helps us to get the content out there. So don't forget that. And until next time, I hope to see you on the trail.